Okay, here I am, guys. Ever the optimist. Ever the optimist. So here it is, Wednesday night. It is the 19th of August, the year of our Lord 2026. And I am in my usual undisclosed location. And hopefully the guys, the gang, some group of the gang will join us as we dig into things. It's going to be, well, I'll put it this way. If DJ Ricky shows up, it's guaranteed to be a wild ride. But, it's interesting how I think we all bring different perspectives to this. I really know that for some people it's getting tiresome, but here we go again. Okay. So the title is The Punch You Don't See and the Pain You Don't Hear. There are a lot of things happening that we're just beginning to kind of find out about. Now, I don't want to pretend that I use Fox News as any kind of a gold standard for, what will I say here, the conservative news media narrative. All I know is I'm out there grabbing what I can and stitching together bits and pieces in order to come up with some sense of where we are on this particular day. And of course, the other problem you have to keep in mind is whenever we pick on some of these news items and point them out, it's in some respects old news, stuff that's been going on for at least several days, but somehow percolates to the top, such that people like myself can grab these items and tell you about them if you haven't already found out about them yourself. So, thing I really want to pick on the most? Yep, here we go again. I think if you take the news about Iran over the last even week, okay, there's a collective sense that Iran is losing ground. You hear them making a lot of noise, making threats and demands and announcing plans for invasions. I'm going to say it. In a funny way, it has a ring that's just like when Hitler in his last days was ordering phantom divisions that didn't exist to go attack the Russians. But that's where he was. And I think that's where the Iranians are right now. But in the case of the Germans, you didn't have the German people getting ready to rise up against you. In Iran, that might be a different story. And on that point, let me just share some things that once again were shared from Tausi TV. I didn't look at Iran International. Need a little more time. But first, there was an assassination attempt in Los Angeles against a gentleman who is part of the Constitution Party for Iran. This happened a couple days ago. He's hospitalized, but it looks like he survived. So I would say at the very least, there's a sense that there is some, what is it I want to say here? There is some reach on the part of the IRGC into cities in America. And Los Angeles, as we know, has the largest American Iranian expat population, right? So that they're, active there is not a surprise. All right, so I want to just give guys a heads up here if they're not paying attention. They probably are busy. We all are busy here at one point or another. Okay, so that is a noteworthy piece of news, and it is an indication that, the fight continues. However, from time to time, we've mentioned a group called the Immortal Guard. And they've started to distribute literature in Los Angeles. And I think it's in Los Angeles. But I wouldn't be surprised if they've been distributing some in Iran as well. And so it's an interesting combination here because you have people who are still too afraid to speak up. They don't have the resources with which to really rebel, okay? So the people who are, shall we say, getting ready to fight are sending messages to let the people know that they're on the case and that there's really not that much you just have to be patient. And there's a recognition that at some point, Prince Pahlavi is going to put out the call to take action. And, this is the other thing, by the way. He is the center point right now, like it or not. I mean, we've criticized him before for his lack of experience, but Pahlavi is the man, right? He's the one that everybody is leaning on, and he's had to become a quick study in leadership for his country. Make Dad proud, just saying. And all right, but we haven't heard much. Although I will remind you, ladies and gentlemen, there was that embarrassing moment in Berlin where he was walking the street and he supposedly had bodyguards around him, and some guy snuck up from behind and spray painted him with some orange paint. And luckily he didn't get shot. So I think since then the security guard that he has is, shall we say, tightened up their procedures. All right, that said, the work continues. And so this group, the Immortal Guard, which I guess is affiliated with Prince Pahlavi, is trying to reassure people that they're busy doing what they're doing, and it takes time. And the other thing was mentioned by Tausi that it seems like the groups in the northern part of Iran are better prepared than the ones in the southern, whatever that portends. I don't know. Nonetheless, so this has got to be making the IRGC nervous, because you have all these little signs that the people are beginning to, shall we say, get in position. And I mentioned last night that the Basij had been sending messages that they can't handle the crowds. This is going to get out of control for them. So that's their first line of defense. But as was also pointed out, Iran does have its proxies. They have supporters, in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, even Egypt. And those proxies are ready to come into Iran and start doing the dirty work for the IRGC, killing civilians. It's only a matter of time. And then the problem I'm having with that is that, it's a call to America, okay, that we have to do something about these inhumane acts. That we're going to have to get more directly involved if they start killing people in the street, because in some ways we might be seen as complicit. It's going to be a tough moment if that happens. A tough moment. So, all right. So there are those things, and there's this again. They're not ready for any kind of frontal assault. There's stories about some guerrilla groups having killed some soldiers at checkpoints, but it's again like any guerrilla group. It's hit and run stuff. But it's enough to make life for the IRGC uncomfortable, because somebody is coming for them. Yes. So that said, I don't know what this announcement where the Iraqi Kurds said that they're going to work with the IRGC, what that's going to look like on a day-to-day basis, I have no idea. So, but we're going to find out. So while all that is going on, we have, I will call it the storm. Well, before I get to the storm overhead, the other part has been the announcement that we've been getting more oil through the strait than people are admitting. Now, that kind of story has been reported before several weeks ago, and so here it comes again. I think the claim now is that somewhere around 10 to 12 million barrels of oil are going through the strait every day, so 20% at 120. Supposedly, I find this hard to believe, but that represents almost half of the normal daily volume of oil that goes through the strait. Okay, however, we have to be reminded, and this too has been brought up a number of times, but I don't mind repeating it for the audience. You have one pipeline going across the Saudi Arabian desert. And if I have my numbers correct, they were originally, I'm not sure about this. I'm going to go with a conservative number. They were able to pump 1 million gallons, 1 million barrels of oil a day through this pipeline, but they were able to increase the flow rate. So it's more like 2 or more million barrels through that one pipeline. Meantime, they're building a second one. And then the UAE is building a pipeline to the I guess we should say the southern side of that peninsula there that's below the Strait of Hormuz. And then other things are being done as well to bypass the Strait of Hormuz. So this is becoming a problem. Now, one of the things, oh God, I didn't put up, but it's just a headline, okay, about how the United States has developed what they call a secret channel by which ships are being gotten through the Strait of Hormuz. So that secret channel would obviously be as far away from Iran. It would be more on the Oman UAE side that these ships are going through. The article also gives you the impression that the United States Navy is working much more closely with these shipping companies in order to get those shipments through. So all this adds up to just more and more bad news for the Iranians. Okay. All right. So there's that. Meantime, all right. Now this is the part I think that starts to get interesting. You're going to have a showdown. Okay. President Trump is ready for a showdown. If we were to go to the Liberty Daily, I think the most recent headline now involves the plan where Trump is announcing what we'll call Operation Economic Fury on steroids. Only instead of going after just Iran, now the message is to every single country that is helping out Iran in one way or another. It doesn't matter. Food, weapons, material of various kinds, whatever it is you're doing, we are going to sanction you economically as well as Iran. And by the way, we know who you are. That's, to me, is that's a pretty strong warning. And part of me is saying, well, why didn't you do this sooner? But okay, this is where we seem to find ourselves right now. And well, another thought here is that I'm sure that the U.S. Navy has to take daily account of the status of the Iranian military and their ability to attack. And the bug boats seem to have been reduced profoundly in number, and they really don't have any naval anything to speak of that provides any threat. So now the Iranians have defaulted to missiles and drones, and most of those are being knocked down in one way or another. Meantime, Iran is trying to promote a propaganda campaign claiming that they're in control, they've kidnapped American sailors, blah, 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 but there's no evidence of that. But they insist on doing it. Okay, they insist on doing it. That's fine. So after I've gone through all these different things, what's sort of the take here? Again, it's kind of like a boa constrictor, slowly choking its victim to death. I feel like that's what's happening. But now, with this announcement concerning even more economic pressure, I think the amount of squeezing is going to intensify dramatically. It's coming. It's coming. So anyway, but I do my best to talk about it for you. So the punch you don't see, that would be these economic sanctions. And the pain you don't hear is the moan and the groan of the IRGC, because this life is getting more and more difficult for them, right? You're not going to see that much. All right, yeah, I'm going to say it. Well, let me qualify my comment. We've talked time and again about how their missile capabilities are significant, okay, and along that coast they're facing the Persian Gulf, close to the Strait of Hormuz, they're able to keep sending out missiles. But I just, if let me just put it plainly, if we are able to really hammer down on the different ways in which they're sending stuff to Iran, we should begin to see in the next maybe 2 weeks a significant drop off in their ability to attack. So where are they going to be? And the other part is, given what I just described about how the shipments are increasing through the Strait of Hormuz as well as using these alternates, at some point that has its impact, right? I think the internal divisions within the IRGC have been exaggerated. Perhaps they're there, they're real, they're a problem, but it's not causing them to fall apart. Not causing one faction to suddenly break and try and make a deal with the Americans. No, that hasn't been. Excuse me, that hasn't been happening. So it's this is a funny image. I'm going to go with this. All you Clint Eastwood fans out there, if you remember that wonderful movie, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, okay? And we had that scene at the end of the movie, the three-way draw, okay? And of course, our hero won in the end. But there's that moment before things break, right? And it's like, who's going to make the next move? Who's going to do what? And it just kind of feels to me like that's another way of looking at the position Iran finds itself in. Yeah. So, and let's, just to make the point, we haven't heard that much from Israel during this time. And all right, what we do know is that Israel launched an attack on a Turkish base in Syria, to prevent them from deploying. So there's this apparent back and forth. I'm not quite sure how to regard this because, Israel's real deal here is to deal with Hamas and deal with Hezbollah. Now they're talking about dealing with Turkish forces in Syria. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we have been very critical. We have been very critical about the Greater Israel Project. But, when you start to attack the Turks in Syria, it's got a Greater Israel Project feel to it. I'm just saying. Not that I'm suggesting they're doing it. There are other strategic and tactical considerations by putting pressure on the Turks, and they are not happy one bit. So how does that roll in the next couple of months? It's clear that the Turks are trying to put more pressure on Syria. So it's weird. Let me just say this about Syria. The fact of the matter is that the current president, al-Bashir, I think is his name, where he was born? He was born in Saudi Arabia. He's a Saudi Arabian. Okay, so he ends up, in Syria as a branch of ISIS, doing all the horrible things that he did to people. And now we've tried to dress him up and put paint on this, Islamic murderer. And that's where he stands at the moment. Meantime, though, somehow it's Turkey that is somehow influencing him, even though his affiliation, his allegiance is Saudi Arabia. It's stuff like this. They have their own sense of political realities that I can say I'm still trying to understand. Okay. So, well, I guess maybe in some sense, al-Bashir is trying to play two ends against the middle. He's going to get racked around because of Erdogan. However, I need to share some other news with you. I didn't put up on the bitching sheet I have today, but it is in the news, and this is important. I can't believe this. All right. I'm going to preface it this way. Okay. In the run-up to the Iraq War, all right, Saddam Hussein was made out to be yet another guy who had designs on developing nuclear capabilities ad nauseum, biological weapons. And part of the story, if people remember, was that as we were approaching invading him, there was a convoy. The Russians helped. It was, I think, 20, 30 different trucks seen from satellite heading to a place called Bekaa Valley in, Syria. Yes. Never to be seen again. Where did they go and what was in the trucks? Well, we never found out. But I think today we have a pretty good idea, because in the news, ladies and gentlemen, was the announcement that might have been the IAE. Somebody was digging around in Syria. Don't know if it was in the Bekaa Valley, but they found, wait for it, drum roll please, tons of uranium. So that'd be what do they call it? Yellow cake, right? Tons of yellow cake. Somewhere buried in Syria. Now, how could it have possibly gotten there? The part that's really stupid is when you read the article, there's no mention of Iraq. There's no mention of anything I just told you about. Okay? It's all somehow because of Assad. Nonsense. Nonsense. They never had a program. They never had the capability. All right? I want to remind you also to support my argument here that when you go back in time, it turned out that you had 3 countries. So that would have been, I'm sure somebody will correct me. Anybody speaking up here? I'm waiting. Let's see. We'll have to read that later. Sorry, guys. Nobody's speaking. All right. So here's the thing. Iraq, Libya, and I'm trying to remember the third country. Together, what they had done was conspire to create a nuclear program. We're talking back in the 80s and 90s here. But to avoid detection by the IAEA and the Americans, they took the program and divided it into different parts. And so when Libya was taken down, we found evidence inside some mountain of a program in which the Libyans had engaged that was clearly directed at developing nuclear capabilities. Only in the earliest stages, nothing to get all excited about, but that's what they wanted to do. So from that led to whatever other country I can't remember right now, and then to what was going on in Iraq. Okay, so this all preceded the case of all these trucks going into Syria. So now we found this, and at first Syria was going to give it the yellow cake up, but now they're not. We're going to make sure that with the cooperate with the help of the IAEA, we'll keep it under lock and key, and everything will be fine. Sorry, BS. I'm calling BS on that. Nope. There was a survey, a quick online survey, but of course kind of biased because of the readership. And the question was, well, what should we do? I watch over it, trust Syria, have some kind of modified program, or get that damn uranium out of Syria. Okay, 77% said get it out of Syria. 77%. All right, it's a no-brainer. I mean, after all the stuff we've been through, and after everything that President Trump is saying about we're not going to let Iran get a nuclear weapon, how about not letting them play with uranium or yellow cake? How about that for openers? Just a thought. Okay, same here in Syria now. Well, we'll see how that goes, because this is just breaking news, so we don't know what's going to happen next. But wow, all right, what other secrets are there? Anyway, the main point I want to make about this, ladies and gentlemen, is that here you have the discovery of this yellow cake in Syria. Buried, not stored in containers in a warehouse, buried. So what was going on with that? They like squirrels? They expect to come back and find the nuts later? No. Okay, I am going to say it. This vindicates the former President Bush. It vindicates General Powell and all the others who got up in front of the United Nations making their case for why it would that justified invasion of Iraq. It turns out they were right after all. And by the way, there were, I believe, 4 tons, something, I mean, small, I guess, compared to things today. But when they invaded, they did find some yellow cake in Iraq. So the intent, was clearly there, even if they didn't have the technology, the capability, the resources, but the intent was there. So now we find more of it buried in Syria, and everybody's scratching their head. Gee, how did it get there? Where did it come from? Is your sense of history that daft? Are you so incapable of thinking back to the events in the past, just as what I laid out to you? Look, little old me just sitting here with my punky little show, and I'm telling you about this, and you people can't connect the dots? Wow. All right, enough of that. All right, Eric. Oh, perfect. Eric shows up just as I'm good. Eric, you showed up just as I was peaking on my rant. All right, how you doing?
You peaked on your rant, which
Yes.
was what?
Okay. Did you hear about the uranium, the yellow cake that was uncovered in Syria?
No.
Okay. Well, there was an article about it. And so, what is your reaction if you hear about yellow cake being found buried in Syria?
Nothing good.
Well, I mean, what line of thought might you pursue if you want to explain this away in some fashion?
Um, I don't know if this had anything to do with Hillary Clinton being over there, but
There was an indirect connection, very indirect, but go ahead.
uh, because I seem to recall or remember um, something about her and a correlation to her and yellow cake uranium in the Middle East, and that was a long time ago. But
Well, there was Benghazi.
right. Being
And
shot at, blah
Benghazi,
blah
yes.
blah.
So
Right,
Benghazi was about supplying arms to groups in Syria to get
right,
rid of Assad, right?
right,
Okay.
right.
Yeah. All right.
And the whole "what difference does it make" sort of thing. Right.
Classic line. That'll go down in history.
Yeah.
That's how we'll remember Hillary. Okay, there you
Right.
go. So, do you remember? Let me start it this way. When General Powell got up in front of, I believe it was the United Nations, justifying their invasion of Iraq and putting up all these poster boards and talking about all this information about, weapons development, nuclear power, bio warfare, and stuff that Hussein was doing at the time.
Right.
Remember how he was ridiculed?
Vaguely.
Yeah, well, he was ridiculed. It was a very embarrassing moment. Okay, this is all after the fact because they had already invaded. Okay, but so here they were trying to justify what they were doing. I am saying to you, Mr. Gould, that this news about finding yellow cake buried in Syria vindicates President Bush, vindicates General Powell, because you may remember there was another little rumor floating around about how a mysterious convoy had left Iraq for Syria, purportedly containing all kinds of nasty stuff. Remember that? Headed to Bekaa Valley?
I don't.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's the tidbit. Okay, so I don't know. Maybe it'll take the geniuses a couple of weeks. I don't know. Okay, but at some point, all right, the report will come out. They'll connect the dots and they'll go, oh, gee, oh, gee. So that's what I've been ranting about.
Right.
Right. So,
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. I really don't know what to say to all that.
Mhm.
As uh, I think the more disinterested I become in just politics in general,
Yes.
whether it's geopolitical or regional or
Mhm.
local, but as they say, all politics is local, which is kind of the reason one of the things I wanted to bring up is that there needs to be a little bit more of an emphasis on, uh, you know, putting grist to the mill here in Connecticut,
Mm.
with respect to, the things that need to come out, the truth telling that needs to be done,
Mhm.
and so forth, and offering solutions to the problems um, that were that are foisted upon us.
Mhm.
Um,
All right. So where's your point?
but I guess what I started to say was the more disinterested I become, it just seems like if I don't think about it or leave it alone, it eventually has a way of ironing itself out or whatever. Like and I've taken the stance that for probably about a year now, but I haven't really talked too much about it, that I've just really become kind of disinterested in what Donald Trump does or says or
Mhm.
doesn't do or whatever. Um,
Mhm.
I, somebody made the point that China doesn't, I think this was on the Connecticut Jason's channel but which was being
Mhm.
hosted by
Sabina.
yeah, and she was having a conversation with some young guy, and he says that China doesn't want a war, but I mean,
Are you
that's not
are you
that's not.
kidding me?
Well, hold on. So
Excuse me.
I don't want to get or turn. I don't want to turn into some kind of emotional gesticulation fest.
Okay,
Um,
well, I'm now gesticulating about aircraft carriers that China is building. How's that gesticulation?
right, right. So, like, well, I guess to the point, and if I were there and I were on that podcast, I would say au contraire. China has been, um, manufacturing their war machine and their efforts at building a war machine for the better part of 20 or 30 years now. They've been building artificial islands. Um, against international treaties that they've been violating. They've been infiltrating. They've infiltrated our culture quite extensively.
Did you hear
Uh,
about the Department of Defense?
uh, like, is something recent or?
Yes, just a couple days ago.
No, this I didn't hear about.
Okay, we Natalie Winters has found a number of individuals who are working in the Department of Defense who are shilling for China.
Sure,
Okay,
right.
that's called spying.
Well, right.
Or
So
in our Department of Defense,
well, and then you got like
people who are vetted,
right.
top
So
secret clearance. They're supposed
okay,
to be good,
right.
and they turn
So
around and do this.
yes. So then you got Eric Swalwell and that whole thing, and you got well, I mean, you go all the way back to the Clinton administration, right? When we talked about
Yeah,
this
sure.
the other day
All
about
right.
him selling, and this was on something Rush Limbaugh had covered,
Mhm.
where he had sold. That's true. I mean, that's straight up. I really don't. I mean, see, we've been on this trajectory of just ho hum oh well kind of attitude by our elected
Yeah,
officials, even back during the Clinton administration. I mean, they knew that he was selling secrets to or what was it, missile technology
right.
to China.
Well, it's rocket
That
technology.
well, whatever it is, but it's still
Well,
it's still
can I be more
ca-
specific? The
uh,
problem was that China did not have the ability to do staged rockets. The ability to separate the first stage from the second stage required a level of timing and capability the Chinese didn't have. But through Loral technology, that was given to China.
they didn't buy it; they was just given to them,
They
right?
stole it. Right.
Right.
It's top secret. No, it was taken. And they convinced somebody to give it to them.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, but nothing happened. It's just like, how, uh, no consequences. And so, I mean, that's why I've long been of the opinion that we're just, in a lot of trouble. And I think going back, 30, 40 years, you know, speaks to the point. I think I noticed that after the assassination attempt was made on Reagan, he completely changed. He really changed
Yes, many people have said this. Yes.
his policies. I was, guffawed. I was just like, what is he doing? There's a lot of things that he did that I didn't agree with. And then and then members of his own administration were doing stuff unbeknownst to him. And I think that was revealed in the whole Iran Contra thing. And I
Mhm.
think his wife, uh,
Nancy.
Nancy, told him that he needs to tell the American people, what time it is and that he was wrong or whatever. I think, and then he made some public address acknowledging that, stuff was going on
Mhm.
that shouldn't have gone on and, et cetera and so forth. But that whole Oliver North thing, and that was just like, uh, it was just another dog and pony show. It was unreal.
Mm.
And,
Okay. Nothing new. But speaking of dog and pony shows, what do you think?
What am I looking at? That looks like is that?
Dudes in dresses.
Oh, they declare war for the.
No, they declare for it. No, they're announcing that they're going to become part of the WNBA. Okay, so I couldn't put up the clip, but the clip was pretty funny with these guys walking around doing, and this one security guard was watching them, and she couldn't figure out what they were doing, but suddenly just broke out laughing.
Right. Huh.
There you go. So that's just all right. There are some places where there's hope. That's one of them. That's one of them.
Yeah, I think what's her name? Sophie Cunningham.
Yep.
Has done quite well at being quite a boon for the sport,
Mhm.
and even a role model, for young ladies who want to get into that, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, in the meantime, the
So,
so-called leadership is going to have to get their act together.
yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But kudos to her for thumbing her nose at the establishment, and um, I don't know what the parameters are, and part of me wonders whether some of it was even staged to call attention to the sport. I don't know. I mean, anything's possible. Um, it's just like a misdirection, but it's like who was paying attention to the WNBA before? Well, I think Caitlin Clark was bringing, some attention to the sport as well, because I think she was also suffered.
Yeah, a lot of injuries. Yes,
Suffered a lot of injuries in the
and
sport.
the referees didn't do anything about them.
Right.
Outrageous.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, to your point about Connecticut, yes. And I think you said I'm down. What was your message on I'm down?
Ben Proto going to jail. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, conditions under which he could be sent to jail are yet to be discovered. I mean, the claim by
I think there is a there. It's not a nothing burger. There is plenty of a there.
Right.
And
So,
this again comes back to the idea: is there a will to actually hold these people's feet to the fire?
mhm.
I mean, it's getting to a point like with all the flock camera stuff and, being, I think, wasn't Greenwich one of the towns that was going to pass one of these, and this kind of went by Fred Camille, but they were talking about combating anti-Semitism sort of thing.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And that was that committee that they set up, the anti-Semitic committee. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like really,
speech police, right?
Well, right. It's like another hate speech committee,
Mhm.
right? So, and I briefly had a conversation about this with Jonathan Goldstein, but I can't remember if he was for or in support. I mean, based on what he told me and what he wrote, seemed to be like two completely different things. It's kind of like I'm looking or experiencing two different people or whatever. But yeah. So like the double speak and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
This is why part of the reason why I'm done is just like it's like are Jews the only people that are made fun of or marginalized or whatever? I think not. There's a plethora of a cross section of cultures, ethnicities, and so forth that are where people are mocked or made fun of and that sort of thing. But this comes back to a free speech issue, and this is one of the things that I was pressing him on, which I don't understand. To me, it's like a no-brainer. And I think Joe Kelly is another, lackey
Yeah,
that is going along with this like whole,
I think he's worse
you
than
know,
Aladdin.
well, whatever. I mean, it's just kind of like he's another rhino. He's a Democrat from like 20 or 25 years ago or whatever, and with an R in front of his name. I never hear these people actually talk about like we got to do like what it is. It's like when it affects them and in their pocketbook or their purse strings or whatever, they're going to speak up and say something about it. And if they have leverage,
Mhm.
they'll do something about it. But you know, uh, I this suicide, and then of course there's the component of this whole suicidal empathy thing.
Yes, that's
With
yeah.
the Democrats have latched onto and so forth.
Mhm. Right.
So Eli just made a comment. Hope you guys are having a good night tonight. Yeah, thanks,
Okay.
Eli. Yeah, we're doing all right. Be sure to like share the link with some of your friends too, so we can maybe have
Yeah,
more
get them
people,
on here.
more people participating. But you're one of the faithful, Eli, and we appreciate having you,
Mhm.
having you on, or there anyway.
Mm.
So Joe Kelly is, the thing. My fondest, and I use fondest in air quotes. My fondest memories of Joe Kelly when I would go to these Board of Ed meetings.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just like you got this like the fluoride 1,000-yard stare, and he was just like sitting on his hands, listening to these people come up, like no response, like there's no interaction. It's kind of like it's an us and them type of thing. You go to a panel of
Mhm.
people that are supposed to be representing the interest or concerns of the parents. Of course, they're given x amount of minutes to speak or whatever, but there's no there. It doesn't seem to me that there's a dialogue. They just go in there, the panel, and they take the tongue. Because I think they kind of like they're. I can only imagine them like back in the green room or the locker room, getting all worked up. Okay, we're gonna take a lot of heat tonight, guys. So
Mhm.
so chin up, buck up, just sit there, be quiet, and just nod your head and whatever.
Mhm.
And
Well,
some of them didn't even do that. Cody Kittle's over here fiddle farting on his phone,
is he
and
still around?
I don't know. I think he's gone. I mean, he's not on
Yeah.
the board anymore, or the
Hmm.
Board of Ed anymore. He
Just
was on the Board of Ed, and
one term.
you know,
Kid.
yeah,
Gee.
whatever. I mean, it was just like something for another wealthy guy to do. This is what the
Mhm.
wealthy people do. They get in when they basically have done their stuff, made their accolades. They get involved with town or local politics, but they don't. They've never actually talked to common folk or done things with regular people. Now, this is kind of what perplexes me about Fred Camillo. Fred
Mhm.
Camillo is supposedly, um, from middle class, hardworking, middle class family, but yet, fast forward to his political career, you wouldn't know who he is.
Mhm.
And I don't. Here's another interesting caveat to this. Now, you remember Patrick Sasser, right?
Sure.
Now, Patrick Sasser, I like him actually, but
Yeah.
I
Me
don't know that
too.
I would agree with all of his politics, but I like him, and he was supporting Ryan Fazio, and
Yeah,
I
we're
kind of
going.
came out. I kind of came
Eli,
out.
we're going down memory lane here. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, my point is that as of late, now I don't know if he still supports Ryan Fazio, or
Oh, he
maybe
has
he's.
to. He has to.
Well, please let me finish my point, because I've constantly seen him promoting and propagating Ryan's stuff and whatever, and like posting or reposting and sharing.
Mhm.
And for months, I've not seen him do any of that. In fact, I
Really?
don't know if he blocked me, or maybe it's because he blocked me and because I'm not seeing it anymore. I actually didn't
Okay.
bother to go in there and look, but
Mhm.
um, so so there's that, and then yeah, and it's just kind of like it's my turn. I'm in the club. I did my time. Um, Now it's my turn to take a crack at it. Your politics be damned, or representing what you. And the thing of it is Ryan will latch on to whatever, whichever way the political wind seems to be blowing. And this is why, um, this is
Yeah.
why Kim Fiorello used to make the commentary. She called him squishy, and he is.
Mhm.
He's malleable, and I don't know that that's somebody who has good leadership qualities that they can,
Yeah.
basically bend to whichever way the political wind is blowing.
Yeah. Well, we haven't seen an example of, well, I'm going to say leadership skills, but more to your point, we haven't seen him show any spine.
Yeah.
No. All right. But here we are again. And in a sense, this is Stefanowski 2.0, because Stefanowski was not what you would call.
That's what I've said. That's exactly what I said. I said Ryan Fazio is Bob Stefanowski, minus 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for depressing me.
Me?
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, it just
the negative features of our leading candidate for governor.
Well, this is why I can't. This is why I can't. I don't know what it is. I just can't get enthusiastic about him. I can't.
Mm-hmm.
If he wins, that's great, fantastic. Kudos to him.
Well, there's another thing to consider, and that is that he's become poisoned by the legislative culture in Hartford. Have you ever? I guess you haven't ever hung out, but you can see it if you go to the committee hearings, and if you ever watch videos of when they're debating on the floor. Everybody is the soul of civility. They are so diplomatic. They are so full of regard for each other. I could puke. Okay. And he's just been a part of that culture for however many years. So now he's just walking around. No, think of it as a form of brainwashing. He's been brainwashed to act like that, and that's sucked all the life out of his capacity for leadership, in my humble opinion.
Well,
yes. Well, anyway, let's talk about your vote.
Yeah.
So what's
yeah? No, I gotta get you out there. But it's supposed to. The rest of the week is, I put it away. It's supposed to rain the rest of the week. The forecast for the rest of the week is just awful. Okay. This August has been one of the more unusual Augusts on record of being so wet. I mean, I've never seen anything. I can't remember the last time it's been this rainy in August for a while. Okay. So I hope we get some. Now there's a what do you call it? I hope September is actually more favorable, in term. And the thing of it is like usually when August is dry, you get a lot more. There've been some lightning bugs, but not.
Really?
The
lightning bug.
Well, actually, well, that's not entirely true. Like maybe at the end of July, maybe in the first week of August, they were somewhat prolific, but. And I don't know if this has to do with the rain or anything.
Yeah, I want to address a point here Eli brought up. He said, just really hope we don't get to a place where people are no longer able to choose whether they want to serve in the military or not. That would be brutal. I would assure you that it will have to be under extreme conditions, Eli, that we would ever see the draft get restored. Yes, it's true. And now women who, when they turn 18, are supposed to go to the post office and register with the moribund selective service. Yes, that's all true. But so long as, one, we continue to meet our recruiting goals, and because of Trump, we have exceeded our recruiting goals in the different services. And I'll tell you that because you have people who are signing up voluntarily, this is what you call a professional military. And there's nothing a professional military hates more than having to deal with draftees. Okay? Draftees are people who don't want to be there. So you have this conflict with people who want to be there and people who don't want to be there. So the people that want to be there can hardly wait to get rid of the people who don't want to be there, and the people who don't want to be there can hardly wait to leave. It's a mess. So I think in the eyes of the military, as long as we get the people we need, no, there will never be a draft. I have spoken. Yes, that's right. No, I mean, part of this is well, I'm going to put it this way: rediscover patriotism and a love for our country. Okay, and that will naturally produce more people who will come forth. Right now, what should I say? Down south, the Midwest, the heart of America. These are the people who still believe in America, and these are the ones who stand up and volunteer. Okay, although here's the exception. A lot of people like those who live in Greenwich. I'm thinking of people like, what's his name? Carl Higbee.
Oh, okay. Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Carl's the perfect example. Okay. Born and raised in Greenwich. Okay. But what did he do? He went on to be in the Special Forces. So you'll find, strangely enough, I don't know how you want to look at this, because come on, being in the SEALs is tough. The washout rate is extremely high. Yet somehow kids who tend to come from affluent neighborhoods tend to end up in the Special Forces. Okay, so that's the one curious exception.
Well, I think because they also have to have an aptitude for, being able to assimilate copious amounts of information and data and complex, war tactics and all that kind of stuff, and they have to study all those sorts of things.
Yep. Okay.
So sure, yeah, I get it. I mean, anyway.
Although the way that Carl would describe it was like a vacation, he goes SEAL training like a vacation. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, that is funny.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So. He was, well, you were there at the Cadillac Ranch, I think, when he gave that talk a couple months ago, and he was talking about, love or hate Ned Lamont. He's kind of barely holding the line with respect to all of the real radical stuff that the Democrats want to do.
Well,
and I don't understand. I mean, like Ned Lamont is just got no backbone or spine, and he's allowing this attorney general to just be an activist attorney general. He's not actually, in my estimation, an attorney general for a state should want to comply and work with the Department of Defense or the Department of Homeland Security or whatever, and comport to federal law. But like, that's not him. He thinks that Tong thinks that Connecticut is and this is the other thing I don't get. I think Ryan is has kind of tiptoed around the issue, but I wish he would be more assertive.
This is true for all of them. I mean, up and down the list. I mean, my God. Okay, I mean, all right. This is going to sound boring, but here we go. All right, I have a little report from Eastern Connecticut here. Just want to let you know that the candidates that we've seen for state representative, that would be Carlisle Chacon and state senator representative Lisa Dean, a little too mild-mannered for our tastes. Same old crap.
Right.
Okay. And so, it's going to be weird. So again, I bring up John Sampieri. He is not the soul of rectitude. No. He is not a gentle person. No, I wouldn't say that at all. So it's going to be interesting to see how these all too gentle souls deal with someone like John when he's telling them how to run their campaign. It's coming. It's coming.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, yeah. Yeah, I after this, I'm supposed to get, I got to finish a project, but I am just so wiped out from today after this podcast. I'm just gonna like do a swan dive into bed.
Okay. All right.
Um,
Well, before the swan dive, I just want to remind you once again, when you get a chance, you just need to take
so
Steeped in America.
so we
Make
got a question from Eli. Um, all right. So is Christ? If you're talking, are you referring to Jesus?
He is.
Okay. Right. So this is my belief about. I'm hearing feedback through your speaker, Court.
Me? Wow.
Yeah. Well, I just am. Um,
What?
so I don't know how. All I know is I'm hearing it. Um, so the second coming. So here's the thing about the second coming, Eli. The return of Jesus coming back, in the flesh, and the rapture. I guess that's what we're calling it. That's a doctrine that was largely propagated by a man by the name of John Nelson Darby. I think that's his name, John Darby. And he's the one who kind of latched onto this idea of the second coming and the return of Christ. And that was probably in uh, it was either the 18th or the 19th century where this idea gained a lot of traction. So if you're asking me my opinion about it, I just wanted to give a little bit of background, which is why a lot of people do believe that Jesus is coming back. First of all, I think if Jesus did come back, I think that he would probably suffer the same fate that he did 2,000 years ago. And we know, and the reason why we know this is the way that many people act and behave when they are confronted with the truth. Which is to say, people bristle, they get angry, they get hateful, and in some cases they even get violent when you speak the truth to them. And so Jesus had told his followers that those who followed him and truly, you know, uh, you know, really embraced the message of the Sermon on the Mount, these things would happen to them as well. And so we know. So his prediction about that has been absolutely, 100% spot on. So after all of this throat clearing, to answer your question about whether Jesus is coming back, I do not believe that Jesus, the man, is going to return um, to us, to the earth any time now or in the foreseeable future. I think that his mission was, he served the mission that he was intended to serve for his time, which was the fulfillment of biblical prophecy from the book of Isaiah. Read Isaiah chapter 53. I think that what we're currently experiencing now is uh, what the world is experiencing now and has been for probably the better part of 100 years is the Armageddon. In other words,
Eli's putting up more questions and comments for you.
so here, so let me catch up to.
Slow down there, boy. Slow down.
Yeah. So a deeper question: do you think we would doubt or believe is that? Yeah. Of course. Well, yes. I mean, to answer the question, if he returned, yeah, I covered that. Let's see. What if I told you I would doubt him? Would you tell me no? Would you believe it's him? Well, it's kind of like this. I mean, for me, a person of truth or a person of faith is somebody just uh is generally, and particularly somebody who is fulfilling a very, very high mission or office. Um, it's a very humbling thing, I would say. And then I don't know that. I mean, Jesus knew who he was, certainly, and he himself believed that he was the fulfillment of the prophecies in Isaiah, and I don't want to get into the weeds about whether Jesus is God. That's an entirely different discussion. And I'm happy to have that discussion, but I would be considered an apostate or a heretic because I don't believe that Jesus is God in the flesh. And there are reasons why I don't, and I'd be happy to go through those, but I really don't want to because that's a rather time-consuming exercise. But back to the point about the second coming. So here's my take on the second coming. I think the second coming has already happened, but not in the way people think. And the reason I say that is because for me, and I'm speaking for myself when I say, for me, Genesis 1 is a prophecy. So when we look at Genesis 1, verse 26 and verses 27, where God, the word for God is actually a plural pronoun, Elohim. But the word, or God says, let us make a man after our image, after our likeness, male and female created he them. So that to me is a prophecy. So the interesting caveat to that is when you go fast forward to, so Isaiah chapter 53 is the prophetic vision of the masculine representation of God. Isaiah chapter 53, the Messiah or Mashiach. And then the chapter right next to it, which is Isaiah chapter 54, it talks about the feminine or a woman. So Isaiah 53 and Isaiah 54 are both prophecies. One is the prophecy of the masculine representation of God. The other is the feminine representation or the motherhood of God. So that's where we get the concept of father, mother. Now, when you speak in this way to traditional Christians, bristle at that idea because they think that sounds somewhat Catholic, and it's really not. But being able to see, so I think there's another passage, I can't remember. I think it's in the Old Testament where it says, as one whom his mother comforteth, so will I comfort you, and you will be comforted in Jerusalem, or words to that effect. I'm paraphrasing. But, and then there are the Hebrew words and Greek translated from the Hebrew that actually have feminine implications. So, for example, when you go to the book of John and you read about the Comforter, so Jesus is talking about the Comforter, and many people have different ideas about what the Comforter is. It means something very specific to me. But the Comforter, Jesus is talking about the Comforter, which shall come and shall bring all things to your remembrance whatsoever I have said unto you, or everything that I've taught you and everything. The Comforter will complement everything that I've been teaching you, etc., and so forth. So the English word, at least in the King James Bible, is he shall teach you all things and bring all things to your remembrance. So the word he, H-E, he, from the original Greek is ikenos, E-K-E-N-O-S. I think that's how it's spelled. So if you look up the etymology of that word, it's himself, herself, or itself. So that word for he could be expressed in the feminine or the masculine. Now, if you were to read it in the feminine, she shall teach you all things and bring all things to your remembrance whatsoever I have said unto you. Now, that's kind of peculiar. So now let's go fast forward to the book of Revelation. So what do we see in Revelation, specifically in Revelation chapter 12? Revelation chapter 12 talks about the apocalyptic woman. Now, again, depending on which sect of Christendom you are coming from, you will have a very specific idea about what the woman in the apocalypse represents. So there appeared another wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. So I've written about this somewhat extensively. And so many people, and I would say particularly Catholics or people that are coming from that that dogma or doctrine, if you will, believe that the church or the woman represents the church. It's sort of like it's a very generic, in a very generic sense. Some people believe that Jesus is talking about his mother, Mary, but that to me doesn't make any sense, because you see, the entire book of Revelation is written by John the disciple. And so Jesus is basically dictating to John, and John is basically a scribe, and he's writing everything down that Jesus is telling him. And so it seems rather counterintuitive, in my opinion, that Jesus would be speaking about his mother when that prophecy was already fulfilled and done. So when we're looking at the book of Revelation, we're talking about things to come, things to come. So here now, the woman clothed with the sun is now a prophetic vision, according to Jesus himself, of someone who will make war against the dragon. Okay, so if you read to the end of chapter 12, you said that the woman and the remnant of her seed, which have the testimony of Jesus Christ. So it's speaking about a very, very specific woman, in at least in that context. That's how I'm interpreting it, or that's how I have interpreted it. That's what it means to me, and it makes a whole lot of sense to me. So I believe the second coming has already occurred. I believe it occurred in the 19th century. I think the fulcrum, the full spectrum of the masculine and the feminine representation of deity has already occurred. And I think that what humanity is currently living through now is the Megiddo, or the Armageddon, of which is spoken of. We've already, how many world wars have we had? We've had 2 world wars. We appear to be on the precipice of another. I'm of the opinion that we're already going through it, where you have a deep conflict. There's a great deal of schisms between a lot of people, even within the Christian, faith. There are divisions even within the Christian faith. So one of the passages in scripture that speaks to me about the epoch or the era in which we're living in, where I'm going to paraphrase, where lawlessness or iniquity, the word in the King James Bible is iniquity, where iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. So that word iniquity is lawlessness. And so we're
peppering you.
Yeah. So we're seeing lawlessness all across the board. We're seeing no accountability for anything. And it just seems like the people who were commissioned to represent, lead us, and hold, and have accountability, that no longer seems to be happening. The whole the Epstein files, Fauci hasn't gone to prison or jail. He gets to plead the fifth to something he was to crimes purportedly he was never convicted of, or he was pardoned for crimes, presumably for which he was never convicted of. But why do you need a pardon unless you've already committed the crime? So, the whole, that whole thing stinks to high heaven, and everybody knows what time it is with all that.
Are you going to address Eli's other questions?
All right. So let me take a look here. So what do we got? Yeah. So, well, let me just make okay. Here's the other thing that you see, in order for divinity to reach humanity, in order for divine concepts to make sense to humans, those divine concepts have to correlate to something the human can relate to or identify with. And so this is why Jesus spoke in parables. He took very complex, or rather complex, spiritual ideas, and he spoke in parables. And so he was teaching spiritual lessons through parable. That's one method. And so the word parable comes from the Greek word parabola, and when you break the word parable or parabola down, you have two words, para and bolo. And I think bolo means to throw against. You're throwing something against something else. And so that's kind of what the parable is doing. It's throwing an idea against something that that registers in human consciousness. And then, we say, oh, okay, that makes sense because he's relating it this way. Like, seeds that fall on dry ground don't grow. There's a spiritual lesson or teaching in that. So what that means, and that sort of thing. So, but to the point about spiritual lessons and why the prophetic vision of the feminine makes sense to me. What was the first miracle Jesus performs before he even begins his ministry? So before Jesus begins his ministry, he does something very, very specific before he starts healing the sick, raising the dead, and cleansing the lepers. So what does he do? He goes to the wedding feast in Cana. And what does he do? He turns the water into wine. Now, one has to ask, why is the Bible concerned with recording that as the first of all the miracles that he does before he begins his ministry? I mean, it seems to me that if the Bible is just a jumble of stuff just thrown together or whatever, and then it wouldn't make sense. But it makes sense to me, and it makes very, very much sense to me why that would be the first of all of his miracles. One, he's taking you back to Genesis 1, male and female created he them. Okay, so the record of him going to the wedding and performing turning the water into wine is a reference back to Genesis 1, male and female created he them. So whenever you read or look at water in Scripture or in the Bible, water in the Bible represents God's word, the word of God. So why does he turn water into wine? So what does wine do? So when you think about wine in the human sense, wine, like in the mortal sense or the human sense, it gets you intoxicated and it makes you drunk. But that wasn't really the point. So the point of turning water into wine was to derive inspiration. So for God's word to be understood, it needs to be inspired. And so that's where you could say the play on words with when you talk about wine and spirits, there's something to that. So it's not intoxication in the human sense of being like drunk or whatever. It's being inspired. The word of God needs to be inspired in order to be understood. It's kind of like when the light bulb goes off, above your head, it's just like, okay, I get it now. That's inspiration. So that's wine. Okay. So you can think of wine as inspiration and something that allows you or inspires you to understand what's actually taking place. So that in the human sense, turning water into wine would be, it's a miracle and everybody goes around and gets drunk, but that doesn't really teach me anything. Like, how does that bring me closer to God's word? And how does that help me understand or reconcile everything else that's going on in Scripture? It's just kind of a story that's read in many churches, but many pastors and ministers don't seem to be making the correlation to which it harkens back to Genesis 1, 26, 27, male and female created he them. So what he was doing is he was purifying the sense of the relationship. So where do all human problems begin? And this is another reason why Jesus begins his ceremony or his ministry at the wedding. Where do all human problems begin? between the relationship of a man and a woman. Okay, so arguments, men and women get together, they procreate, they give rise to families, and then of course families go out there and then they propagate and create culture and civilization and so on and so on. So all of the schisms and all of the contentiousness and all of the
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Good.
So, I see Mary at 12.
Right. Yeah, I'll get you there.
can you yeah, you could mute your
All right. He's just here for a second.
Oh, okay.
He's going to bed.
yeah.
All right.
So
Yeah, we'll
good
do
night, Michael.
So, because I want to get something for Walt, so I can have something for lunch there at home.
Well, we'll leave earlier then.
All right.
Okay.
Get me there in time.
Yes.
All right.
All the above.
Okay.
Okay. Good. So good night.
Have a
Good night.
Dad.
Yep. All right.
Okay, so so the spiritual lesson that's being taught is to reconcile the schism or the separation or the the flux that occurs between men and women and therefore in human culture. And so he was addressing all of those. So where does sin come from? It comes from propagating humankind through the will of the flesh, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life, etc., etc. So where does disease come from? Propagation of humankind. Where does death come from? Propagation of humankind. So he was addressing all of that stuff. That's why he begins his ministry at the wedding, because he's heading everything that he's going to encounter in his ministry going forward. He's heading all that off at the pass at the wedding ceremony. And so that's how he's able to cleanse the lepers and raise the dead and cast out demons and all of the other et ceteras that go forward with the healings. And the interesting thing about it is here's another commentary, and this is something another thing I found interesting, that there are, I believe, 8 cases of infertility, I think, in the Bible, and there are 8 resurrections from the dead. So there is a spiritual correlation between infertility and resurrection, or raising the dead. Okay. That's another interesting sort of anecdote, biblical or spiritual anecdote of scripture as well. So, but to your point and your question, I think it's the bringing out, men and women are supposed to be complementary to one another. There isn't supposed to be this contentiousness. There isn't supposed to be a competition between, men vying, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, et cetera, et cetera. There shouldn't be that. And I think I'm of the opinion that if both men and women were genuinely approaching their life, putting God first, of course, and then having that spiritual sense permeate through their human experience, there would probably be a lot less divorce, perhaps, and a lot fewer problems, so a lot fewer societal problems as well, I would say.
Well, one of the things about that book at the time that it came out, we have to remember that feminism was on the rise, and it was causing women to ask, why aren't men more like us? And what that book did was it made very clear to women that men are not like you. We are different from you. And it actually helped calm a lot of women down about this agita they were having in their relationships with men.
Which book is this?
The one you just mentioned. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus.
Oh, right. Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, if you look at the internet and you take a barometer on, people are finding it, both men and women are finding it impossible to date one another any longer. There isn't
Mhm.
any faith. There's no loyalty. There's no, I have a really big,
Yet
I'm
I
a,
just came
I
from
have a
Oregon.
really big problem with a lot of the psychiatry that is proliferated in our culture.
Mhm.
And I am also of the opinion that I think psychiatry has done more damage to human relationships, particularly in the West, than just about anything else. And, you got people going to marriage counselors, and you've got marriage counselors who have been, married and divorced several times over, and they're counseling people in marriage. I mean, that's just insanity to me. That's insane. I don't understand how anybody calling. I don't care how many, accolades and what do they call those, awards or certificates, uh, that people have on their walls. I just don't care about any of that. If a person is genuine, and they're living close, in my opinion, and I'm going to sound a little bit like I'm Bible thumping now, which I probably am, but unless they're genuinely living close to God, I don't think that they have any authority or any business counseling anybody on anything, let alone marriage.
Right. Well, if
So,
anything, the psychiatric profession is hostile to the Bible and Jesus.
well, there you go. It's anti-Christian. It's antichrist.
Mhm.
It's the spirit
Right.
of antichrist.
Okay.
So, and that's
And since we
that's
brought
really,
in, you
yeah. Go
mentioned
ahead.
psychiatry, let me just mention Sheila Matthews and all the work she's doing, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, she is foursquare in this battle over the overprescribing of medication for children by psychiatrists. It's a huge national scandal.
Sure.
But the psychiatric profession has circled the wagons, and they're doing everything they can to protect themselves from her demands that records be released so they could see what kind of harm these psychiatrists are really causing. And there the battle is.
Yeah. I mean, look, I mean, that's just what and I have the utmost respect for what she's doing. I think, that is one of, I I mean, I would say that taking that approach
Hmm.
tends to deal more with the the symptoms of the problem, and not the actual. I mean, it has its place, I would say. I mean,
If you were to
people.
stop psychiatrists from giving kids speed, that's what it is. They just give it a different name, and all these other drugs, the boys in particular would be a lot better off. That's my opinion.
Sure.
All right, but
No
the
argument
problem.
there.
But again, because boys and girls are different, we know the problem is that boys tend to be active, if not hyperactive, and so they're hard to quote control in the classroom. So they're driven to do these things when they should have a better way of handling it. Just
Sure.
be prattling on. Yes.
Yeah, I look, when I used to teach kids, high school kids, how to drive and that sort of thing. I mean, I would constantly hear about kids that were on Ritalin, or
Hmm.
I don't know,
Right.
whatever
Well,
whatever.
Ritalin is amphetamine.
Yeah, well, whatever it was. I mean, kids were popping pill. I mean, it was in the 90s, and this is kind of when it sort of started kicking into high gear.
Right. Yep.
Now, fortunately, my mother had the wisdom to remove me from public schooling. Although I finished public schooling, public school my junior. Well, yeah, I went back halfway through my junior and then my senior year, and I graduated from public school. But half of my K through 12 education was public, and the other half was private. But
Mhm.
I think I was in seventh by the time I was in seventh grade, and my mother caught wind that they were starting to like sending me to the counselor. No, not the what do they call them? The social worker. That's what they're called. That at least that's what they were called then.
And
And so
still,
I was getting sent to the social worker, and they were starting to give me all the typical psychiatric tests, and
Oh,
so they were giving the kids and stuff like that. And my mother caught wind of it, and she said, "Oh hell no!" She said, "No, no, no, we're not doing this. We are not doing this."
mhm,
And she took me out. She said, "No more. Thus far and no farther."
mhm.
So, and to her credit, and her wisdom, she was spot on. I mean, and I think that I was saved a lot of spared a lot of nonsense by not conceding to all that, because it's just I was I was just like I was just disruptive, as disruptive could be. I mean, and I guess you could say it was just a form of rebellion, because, like, I was kind of angry about having to, I just, without going into detail, I was just angry about a lot of things at that stage in my life. And, but eventually I got over them, and I,
Mhm.
I resolved them. And, but I did, but I was able to do it because I had a parent, a parent that was appealing to divine authority to guide me through
Mhm.
all of those things.
Mhm.
Now, I wasn't necessarily a fan of going to Sunday school or going to church when I was, in my teen years. I think I didn't
Sure.
really go attend church too much, but occasionally I did, because that's what my mother wanted, and I didn't really like making my mother unhappy, so I would go anyway. And so I attended, Sunday school all the way up until, I guess, as far as you could go, like through 12th grade, um,
Hmm.
and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, I would occasionally not be in the best frame of mind when I would go to church and stuff like that. But I'm grateful that mom, stuck to the rigging, and, was just emphatic and keeping that at the forefront of my thought going forward into my young adult life and that sort of thing. So
Mhm.
anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
Sure. All right. Well, it's getting to an hour and a half. I mean, if you want to call it a night, we can.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm good. Does Eli have any other questions for us?
Well, his last comment was
I think
about
my ego is looking to see him
yeah,
outright, can't see the subtitles
subtitle subtleties.
or the subtleties. Oh,
Yeah, subtleties.
yeah. Well, if you look for them, they're there. I think one of the last things I'll say about, uh, becoming spiritually or spiritual or spiritually minded is, it has to be a heartfelt, sincere desire. You have to, and it takes humility to do that. I mean, I just put it right out there. You have to be it takes humble. And look, I'm still learning. I'm still learning about it. I don't profess to have
Right.
all of the answers,
Well,
but
don't forget the big one,
what's that?
faith.
Absolutely, all day, every day,
Right.
every
I mean,
day.
because, if you decide that you're going to pursue some sense of an experience of the Holy Spirit, of God, Jesus, and it's not happening, you're going to need some faith.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I genuinely believe that, like I started saying at the beginning of this podcast, that um, what was I saying at the beginning of this podcast?
You start with Genesis.
No, 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 no. It was before we kind of got into the, we segued into the whole Bible thing. Oh, I remember. So just kind of letting go of the politics, and not my will, like what Jesus said, in the Garden of Gethsemane, not my will, but thine be done. And I think that when I speak for myself when I say, when I do that, I feel less bothered by what's going on in the world with the
Mhm.
politics and
Sure.
all of that stuff. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Loads known.
so that's my
Oh,
my soapbox speech for today, and Gosh, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, sure. All right. So until tomorrow, and Deep in America. And I'll get into the other details tomorrow.
Good night, Eli. Good night, Ricky. Good night,
Yeah, well, I
Helen.
need to sleep. So yeah. Okay.